Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
What's the biggest storyline coming out of the NFL Combine? Is it even about the players who did the drills and interviews on the field? Also, the Commanders just added another weapon to Jayden Daniels' arsenal, and hopefully DK Metcalf likes cheese.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
The Underwear Olympics have commenced and finalized. The NFL offseason underway in earnest, and it's not just the testing on the field and the interviews. We had a slew of major NFL storylines and transactions go down during the NFL Combine because we have every major decision maker in the NFL in one downtown area. Damien Parson from Locked On NFL Draft joins me now. And Damien, as we look back at this 2025 NFL Combine, whether it's something on the field, whether it's, it could be the Deebo Samuel trade, the Matthew Stafford stuff, what stands out to you the most?
Oh, man, I would say the Deebo Samuel one is kind of big because this is a team that, we talked about on Locked On NFL Draft. The Commanders need another wide receiver. Like, you have Terry McLaurin, and don't get me wrong, De'Ami Brown did solid this year, things of that nature. Drafted Luke McCaffrey, I believe, 3rd round last year. Didn't materialize into anything much this year. You expect him to kind of try and be a pivotal piece for them next year for 2025, but they needed another guy. And Deebo, he's not 2021 Deebo Samuel, but you said a 5th round pick, which means you can still draft another receiver to pair with Deebo and with Terry McLaurin and everything like that. And if they can get more out of the tight ends as well, I think that was probably one of the storylines, especially with this receiver class that we just saw, where everybody coming into the event, right? The Underwear Olympics. People were completely down on the wide receiver class. Once these guys started running, jumping, and doing all the testing, now everybody's like, hey, it's day 2, we might get a run on wide receivers. Look how that changed really quickly. So I think that might be the biggest storyline that really caught my eye, because I didn't, of course, the rumors were that Deebo's going to get traded. I didn't think Washington, if I heard San Fran was trading any receiver to Washington, I figured it would be Brandon Ayuk.
And who knows, Brandon Ayuk could still be traded if the 49ers want to go major blow up here. I don't know why you would pay Brock Purdy to then have him throw to no one, but look, stranger things have happened in the NFL. I like Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall. We'll see, but it's Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. We're talking about a different class of player here. So the last time we chatted here, Damien, was we had just seen the defensive front guys, and we liked what we saw, especially from the guys that worked out. Plenty of big names didn't work out. But over the weekend, we got basically every big running back name except Ashton Genty. We got to see the corners, the defensive backs. We saw Nick Emenwari absolutely shut the combine down, the definition of call the family, right? Of the workouts that we saw, what did you like the most?
Man, I think what you just said, Nick Emenwari out of South Carolina, 6'3", 225, almost 230 pounds. And to watch him go out there, and one thing is different than what we saw with, Jayden Blue and Isaiah Bond, where they tried to call their shot. 6'3", 220, and he runs 4.38 or 1.49 10-yard split, 43-inch vert, and 11.6 in the broad. He also put up 20 reps on for 225. And I talked about it coming into when I previewed on Friday that workout. I said, listen, this is a guy that we're going to see a lot of different names thrown around for him as comps. I remember, and I'm pretty sure you being a draft guy as well, but remember Obi Melifonwu coming out of UConn. They called him the tight end eraser, similar height and build and athletic profile, and he just never got his footing underneath him. I believe he battled some injuries. Yeah. Nick Emenwari is that guy that you want, especially if you're in a division. Remember when the Cardinals drafted Isaiah Simmons? He was like, well, man, we suck against tight ends. And he helped a little bit. But Nick Emenwari is a guy that you can move all over the defense, put against these high-profile athletic, big body receiving tight ends. You need a guy that can match up with them, not just from a athleticism standpoint. Nickel corners can do that. Now he matches up size-wise and strength-wise as well. I think he was the guy that really, like you said, call the family. We're about to start eating good from here on out.
Yeah, and by the way, he just turned 21, like in the last 3 weeks, turned 21 years old. It's crazy here. I wanted to end with this. We don't want to, call anybody out, of course, but who is someone that you expected a little bit more, or you thought, hey, I kind of didn't expect it to be great, but it was worse than I thought.
Man, Dylan Gabriel, quarterback from Oregon. I felt like he was trying to prove a point by putting too much zip and velocity on throws. When he was out there doing his throwing session, he threw passes in the dirt. He overshot guys. He wasn't. I expect him to come out and be accurate and efficient on time, and it just felt like he was pressing, like he was trying to prove something. And it to me, doing that, his workout did not go as well as you wanted. The ball lost steam the further he threw it down the field. To me, it's like, okay, now you open a can of worms where teams that already were kind of iffy on your size, now they're really iffy on your game.
You can stay up to date on the NFL Combine by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today, Locked On NFL, and Locked On NFL Draft on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. You're Locked On Sports Today. Coming up, Jayden Daniels, Arsenal just got upgraded. Before we get to that, the Cowboys announcing who could get the franchise tag. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. Tonight's NBA slate includes two embattled franchises just trying to pick up the pieces after the trade deadline. The Kings and the Mavs face off. The Mavs, slight favorites, laying 1.5, according to FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. The Cowboys may be close to extending their leader at defensive tackle, but even if they don't, reports are Osa Odigizua will be tagged by Dallas if they can't get a deal done. Locked On Cowboys likes what this means for a potential Micah Parsons deal.
This is very exciting, right? Like, this is great news. I think a lot of us, even a few weeks ago, would have suggested that Osa leaving was a foregone conclusion, right? The fact that they would be able to bring him back, it pretends kind of another positive, good faith step towards them kind of keeping their word as to what they said that their offseason plan was, to be a little bit more aggressive in free agency, to kind of make some changes in how they are, acquiring players during this period. And I think it also kind of portends potential, getting off on the right foot with Micah Parsons, right? Because they suggested, or Steven suggested, that they were going to try to get Osa done, and then that they were right on to Micah Parsons right after that, and that they didn't have anything necessarily kind of holding them up, like they did with CD and the circumstances regarding all the wide receivers that were also looking for contracts at that time. So
in NBA news, the Orlando Magic continue to go through a hurricane of injury news this season as Jalen Suggs will be out indefinitely. The team announced Sunday that Suggs will undergo surgery to remove a cartilage fragment in his left knee. As Locked On Magic host Philip Rossman-Reich points out, the Magic still have good bones, but need a cosmetic repair to get where they want to go.
This is Philip Rossman-Reich, the host of Locked On Magic and the Orlando Magic, once again getting the worst news they can get. Jalen Suggs has been officially diagnosed with a trochlea injury. The trochlea is a part of your kneecap. It's essentially kind of the groove that fits your knee into your femur, into your larger leg bone. But obviously another crushing blow. Jalen Suggs has already missed the last 14 games. He's missed 24 of the last 25 games, and the Magic have sunk without him. It was a key theme on the TNT broadcast for the Magic's loss to Cleveland Cavaliers, how much this team has suffered without him. But after several several weeks of not having clear answers. The injury being called a left quad contusion. Jalen Suggs making progress and then seemingly being reined back. He said he apparently, according to the Magic's press release, he experienced some discomfort, went in for extra imaging, and that is when the injury was discovered. Unfortunately, this has just been the way this season has gone. I've come on here several times to talk about these long-term injuries that have cost the Magic their key players, and it's very much feeling like a lost season for the Orlando Magic. Unfortunately, they do have to carry on. They do have to press forward. They do have to play another game Sunday. They'll have to finish this season potentially without Jalen Suggs.
On the court, the Celtics narrowly beat the Nuggets.
It got a little dicey here in Boston, but the Celtics got the job done thanks to Derek White coming up clutch down the stretch. Al Horford was big throughout this whole game, too, turning back the clock, playing great. Celtics did a good job targeting Jamal Murray early on, built the lead as high as 20 points, but then they started turning the ball over. A bad game for Jason Tatum after having one of the best games of his life. A lot of turnovers overall for the Celtics, a lot of points off the turnovers for the Nuggets. So it was a closer game than the early success would have indicated, but Celtics coming up big. Jaylen Brown looked a little tired, maybe. He's been dealing with knee issues, so a lot of his shots fell short in the fourth quarter, which kind of made things closer. If some of those makeable shots had fell, maybe this would have been an easier game, but it's a nice bounce back for the Celtics after the loss to Cleveland, and now they continue that homestand with maybe an easier game against the Portland Trail Blazers.
And here's a fascinating story. In women's college basketball, the season wasn't enough to determine the top seed in the SEC. They needed a coin flip to officially determine the best team in the conference. South Carolina won that coin flip. Both the Gamecocks and the Texas Longhorns finished the regular season with the same conference record, 15-1, being that each other represented their lone conference loss. It came down to Commissioner Greg Sankey flipping a coin in favor of South Carolina on Sunday to crown the top team for the SEC tournament. The new league year in the NFL hasn't even started, and we already got a trade. Of course, it can't be finalized until the new league year starts, but Deebo Samuel is headed to DC to play with Jayden Daniels to team up with Cliff Kingsbury and Terry McLaurin, and of course, our pal David Harrison from Locked On Commanders. David, a lot of the discourse around this trade immediately was, wow, the Commanders gave up something to take on that contract. Whoa, the 49ers got, like, there's a lot of discourse around the peripheral stuff, not the football stuff. Why did this make sense to your mind from the Commanders' perspective?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, General Manager Adam Peters, head coach Dan Quinn, Assistant General Manager Lance Newmark have all been in lockstep saying their primary objective is finding Commanders, right? Mm-hmm. This franchise was woefully misdirected. This group came in and the players all came together and they established a Commanders standard. And they want to bring in guys that are only going to fall into that standard, but then also help grow that standard even further into the future. And as much as there's been a lot of public conversation about who Deebo Samuel is as a person, who he is in the locker room, whether or not he's going to habitually choke out kickers, the thing that people really have to remember is that Adam Peters knows Deebo Samuel. He was in San Francisco when they drafted him. He was in San Francisco all through just the year before. This is the only year, the 2024 season, the only season that Adam Peters wasn't in San Francisco with him. And yes, that's when some of this stuff went down, but he has a relationship with John Lynch. Like, this isn't a situation where John Lynch is going to pull the rug out from Adam Peters and say, gotcha for your day 3 pick. This is a very knowledgeable transaction happening between two sides. Yes, there's some upside for the 49ers. Yes, there's some upside for the Washington Commanders, because I know there are certainly players in the history of the NFL who've been drafted in the 5th round that have turned out to be very positive players. But typically speaking, Peter, and especially in 2025, you're not going to get a Deebo Samuel type player in the 5th round. So there's a lot to go around for both sides of this thing. And ultimately, the 5th round pick they got from the Saints, or they're given to the 49ers, assuming that it is a 2025. That's unconfirmed as of right now, but we assume it's 2025. That's the pick they got from the Saints in the Marshawn Lattimore deal. So they're giving away a pick that wasn't theirs to begin with. The cap space that they're taking, or the cap hit they're taking on, if they're able to trade or move on from John Allen one way or the other, whether they release him or trade him, they're going to basically get all of that money back. So really, Adam Peters and the Washington Commanders didn't give up anything when you look at what they gave to get Deebo Samuel. So it's really a deal that's just all about making them better. And when you look at Deebo, even in a quote-unquote down year for him, better dynamic player, better receiver to be a number 2 guy behind Terry McLaurin than anybody they had on the roster last year. So, I mean, it's a win all around.
I want to dig into the football part, David, because we've talked about the peripheral stuff, the culture stuff, which is, of course, important, the contract stuff, which is why they were only able to get, I think, a 5th round pick if you're the 49ers, because Deebo Samuel in a vacuum has to be worth more than that. What is he worth to this offense? How does he fit with the way that this offense wants to operate? It seems like we didn't know last year. A lot of the short throws, is that because Jayden Daniels is accurate? Cliff Kingsbury wants to run that offense. This, to me, signals, no, this is who we want to be. And now we're going to get players that fit that identity.
Yeah, look, he's a force multiplier. Like, bottom line is he's a force multiplier. He's a guy that, honestly, very early in the season, this last season, 2024, is going to remind you of Frankie Louvu. Frankie Louvu, early 2024, wasn't setting the stat box on fire, right? But what he was doing was wreaking havoc on offensive lines, blowing up screens, blowing up blocks to allow guys like Bobby Wagner to get into fits without a blocker in the way and make plays themselves. Now, the stats eventually started to come for Frankie, which is why he was a second-team All-Pro and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But Deebo Samuel, you got to look past the stat box. You know what I mean? And I know the stat box has looked a little bit down, so to speak. But honestly, Peter, last 3 years, he's the 11th. He's 11th in the NFL among wide receivers in points scored. So if that's his downward turn from his Pro Bowl season, that's still pretty stinking good. You know what I mean? But then you look at what he does against defenses that are going to make them pull attention away from guys like Terry McLaurin, potentially pull attention away from running backs leaking out of the backfield, tight ends like Ben Sinnott, the young tight end they drafted last year, maybe Zach Ertz if he comes back on a 1-year deal. The things that he's going to be able to do to allow Cliff Kingsbury to manipulate the defense are incredibly important. And then you just kind of referenced in that short passing game, right? Jayden Daniels doesn't really have a check down, right? His check down is running, but Cliff Kingsbury did design some shorter pass concepts, some shorter routes that go along, in the route tree combination for specific plays. Deebo is the kind of guy that's going to be able to really accentuate those and give Jayden a target that he can rely on to execute those plays. Because usually when you see Jayden throw short, it's part of the concept. It's not a check down. So you need a guy that you can rely on as a part of that concept to be there every single time you need him. Deebo is certainly one of those guys. And as soon as the defense thinks they've got it sniffed out, that's when he sneaks in behind somebody and takes off downfield for a whole lot of yak.
You can stay up to date all year on the Washington Commanders by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Commanders on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, DK Metcalf. Could he be fitted for a cheesehead pretty soon? The new league year is upon us, which means the drama is only just starting to unfold. One of the big storylines at the Combine is what the Seahawks decide to do with DK Metcalf. Corbin Smith from Locked On Seahawks reported the Packers were among teams to call on DK Metcalf. I just happened to be able to confirm that reporting over the weekend, and I broke it down on today's Locked On Packers. Conversations were had. And the Packers, as I have reported and has now also been reported by Jeremy Fowler and Dag Graziano, are in the business of trying to add a veteran receiver. Well, the two that make the most sense. This is just an intuitive piece here. Like, forget the reporting. If DK Metcalf, if the Seahawks are taking calls on DK Metcalf, which Corbin Smith is reporting that they are, it makes sense for the Packers to have been one of those teams to call. I'm reporting that they are, confirming Corbin's reporting. It also makes sense for the Packers to weigh that against what it's going to take to get Davante Adams, because what if they can just get Jair Alexander for Davante Adams and that's a done deal? That's not me reporting it. That's me speculating. I need to be clear about this. I think more likely, we'll get to the Davante Adams of it all. I think more likely, a trade for a pick for the Packers, and then they trade a pick to the Jets for Davante Adams. And you can say, why would you trade a pick for Davante Adams? For the same reason the Commanders traded a pick for Deebo Samuel. The 49ers were going to cut Deebo Samuel. The Packers were going to cut Jair Alexander. The Jets have to cut Davante Adams. But the reason you have a conversation about it and you call is because of the value. And we got the reporting, hey, if he gets cut, he may go want to play with Aaron Rodgers. It sounds like in New York. So they'd get to stay in New York with the Giants. So if you're a team like the Packers, you don't want to risk him having the chance to go wherever he wants and either picking better weather or a better quarterback situation for him, he thinks, you trade for him instead. Same reason why someone would trade for Jair Alexander, which is why the distressed asset swap is so appealing to me. If I'm the Packers, I'm looking at that and going, I don't want him to get cut. And then once you get him in, he's not going to play on $35 million cap hit. He's just not. And the beauty of it is there are 2 years at that number and then 2 extra years that are void. So the Packers could take that $35 million, turn, let's say 15 of it into signing bonus. That money goes right into Devontae's pocket. But they get to spread it out over 4 years. And now you take that number down to 23. Sort of right where it would be if you said, hey, Devontae, let's rework this deal. Let's rip up this deal and let's go the Mike Evans deal with interest. 2 years, 45. Well, you can make it the same deal, essentially, if you just restructure it. Now, not every contract allows you to auto restructure those. Most do. So if the Packers could do that, that would give them tremendous leverage. That would be all the reason in the world to trade for him, because you can make that number then whatever you want if you're willing to eat some dead cap money down the line. You could take that 35 and bring it down to 1 and then spread $34 million in signing bonus out over on the cap to 4 years. Take it down to the veteran minimum in base. I don't think the Packers would do that, but they could convert some of it. I think more likely you just rework a new deal, understanding that, hey, if I get cut, Devontae Adams, if I get cut, I got to renegotiate a new deal. And if you're renegotiating against the deal you currently have, that's a more advantageous position for him to be in. So, to recap, Corbin Smith reporting. The Seahawks have taken calls on DK Metcalf. They want the moon. They want a first-round pick and stuff. I don't think that's going to happen. But the Packers, one of, according to Corbin's reporting, 4 teams to call. I confirmed the Packers piece of that. I can't confirm the other parts. The Packers do believe, and I can add this, the Packers do believe if they were inclined to make the trade, they know where the line is. I don't think that line, by the way, is at a first-round pick. I think that they think they can get it. No, I reported that they think they can get it at a number that they're comfortable with. And I believe that number is less than a first and a player. And finally, one of the key factors in any IndyCar race is the communication between pit crew and driver. Scott Dixon did not have that on Sunday and finished second in the Firestone Grand Prix. Dixon's racing team owner, Chip Ganassi, said the radio had not malfunctioned, we would have won. It was that simple, he said. Still, that's pretty awesome to know he raced all 100 laps without any communication. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up, what will be the most obvious headline of the new NFL year? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.